Hello everyone and welcome back to the 3T Path channel. Welcome back to our Uddhava-gita course. Now we're in this fascinating chapter about the mystic yoga superpowers. And Krishna has listed all of them, he's explained them, and now he's going through each one explaining how you attain them. And you might think, oh come on, how to attain mystic superpowers, who cares about that? But actually, in showing us how to attain these superpowers, we'll see that he's actually giving very practical information which you can use to make your life better right now. So let's continue. And of course, if you want to watch all the previous classes, this is already the 82nd class in this Uddhava-gita course. It's already a huge course. And you can have it all just by becoming a member of this channel. And the instructions are here in the description of the video. And make sure you check out Uddhava-gita.com, where you have the whole course nicely organized once you become a member. Okay, so we're in the 11th canto, 15th chapter, verse 16. So Krishna says now he's going to explain how to get Vashita superpower. The yogi who places his mind on my form as Narayana, known as the fourth factor, full of all opulences, becomes endowed with my nature and thus obtains the mystic perfection called Vashita. Now, it's very interesting here. This fourth nature, Turiya Akya. So this is a very interesting concept. We've seen this before, and you'll see it in different places in Vedic yoga philosophy. And what the fourth factor is it's the stages of consciousness. So you have deep sleep, where there's this nothing, like completely deep sleep, and then you have dreaming, and then you have the awakened state. So those are three stages. We're normally going through these three usually every 24-hour cycle, unless you're not sleeping for some reason, you're going through these three: deep sleep, dreaming, and just normal consciousness, awoken. But then there is a fourth state of consciousness. This is called the fourth stage, and here it's called the Turiya. So it's the fourth stage. Of course, what's the fourth stage? Well, that's when your mind is beyond matter. It's beyond normal material consciousness. You're having transcendental consciousness, spiritual awakening, spiritual context. For example, when you're praying to God, when you're thinking of God, when you're doing a course like this, then you are going into the fourth stage of consciousness, because your mind is no longer fixed on just mundane material things. Now your mind is in the spiritual realm. So he says, those who place their mind in the fourth stage in spiritual consciousness, and specifically here he's talking about his form as Narayana, full of all opulences, he becomes endowed with this mystic power called Vashita. So what was Vashita? Vashita is the power of you. Through Vashita, or the power to control, one can bring others under one's dominion, or more commonly, keep oneself beyond the control of the three modes of nature. So now this is what I was talking about. This is actually very down-to-earth practical. So never mind some super mystic power where you can bring others under your dominion, as some people seem to have in this world. But just never mind that. But just the simple thing about you becoming beyond the control of the modes of material nature. Now this is something we definitely want to do, you and me. This is not something like for some, superpower yogi in some mystical past. No, this is definitely our goal. Krishna talks about this in Bhagavad Gita, right? In chapter 14, where he lays out his first full explanation of the gunas, of the modes of material nature. Then he says, mam chayo vyabhicharana bhakti yogena sevate. He says, if you take to bhakti, if you come to me, then you will go beyond the modes. You will attain Brahma Bhuya Kalpate. You will attain the stage of Brahman, of spirituality. So we definitely are working towards that, and you will feel that right away. It's not something like, oh, okay, after 50 years. No, it's something you will experience. I mean, if you're watching this, if you're one of those students, you probably have experienced it already. It's when you're a little not so controlled by the modes anymore. You can take a step back. You're being a yogi now. You're like, you observe things. You observe your mind. You don't identify with all the, modal fluctuations of your mind, like you just get all angry and just submit to that anger. No, you're like, oh wait, there's this, a little anger here, my amygdala is firing off, and I can take a step back. I can take a couple of deep breaths, This isn't me. This is just the modes acting. Yeah, so right then, that's you not being so under the control of the modes anymore. And when you're in an environment and it's a little tamasic and people are like just being crazy and swearing, and then you can this is just tamas, and you take a step back and then you remain in control of yourself. This is what yoga is all about. This is what we're doing. So if you've made any progress in yoga, you already start experiencing this power of vashita. Of course, this is like some, the end result, absolute control. But never mind that. Okay, we might not get it. But you will have this increasing power to not come under the control of the modes of nature by focusing your mind on Krishna, by keeping your mind elevated, by seeing Krishna everywhere, by remembering your spiritual state as a servant of Krishna. That's yoga. So you're practicing yoga, bhakti, mamchayo vyabhichara. You're seeing yourself as a devotee, as a bhakta. You can feel the connection with Krishna, so then the modes don't affect you so much anymore. So this is a very interesting, applicable practice for all of us. Purport. In Bhagavad-gita 7.13, Lord Krishna states, Tribhir gunamayir bhaver ebhi sarvam idam jagat, mohitam nabijanati mamebhya param avyayam. Deluded by the three modes, goodness, passion, and ignorance, Raja, Vidya, Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, the whole world does not know me, who am above the modes and am inexhaustible. Thus the Lord is called Turiya, or the fourth factor beyond the three modes of nature. According to Srila Viragrava Acharya, Turiya also indicates that the Lord is beyond the three ordinary phases of consciousness, which is what I explained in the beginning, namely wakefulness, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. Bhagavat Chabda Shabdide indicates that the Lord is known as Bhagavan, or the possessor of unlimited opulences. So you see this term a lot, the opulences, because it's a translation for bhag. When we have the word Bhagavan, Bhagavad-gita, Bhagavat Purana, so all these bhag means, the translation is opulence. It just means like something really good. Opulence is kind of a funny word, but these days it has it doesn't sound quite right. But anyway, translations are always like that. They always leave something to be desired. But it just means, like whatever. God is infinite in all things. So make a little list, usually like, power, beauty, fame, intelligence, riches, but never mind that. Just think of like whatever is great, whatever is awesome, right? Whatever is desirable and good to have more of, okay? Whatever that is, then God doesn't just have a lot of it. Like he wins, like there's a list and he got more. No, he is the source of everything and thus the source of all those things. So it's not that God has a lot of beauty. He is the source of all beauty. So if anything is beautiful, it's coming from God. You see, he's not just wealthy. He is the source of all wealth. So if any display of wealth, of monetary opulence. That, the word, we usually use it more like that. It's an opulent, opulent mansion, we say, opulent hotel. So whatever is financial, that's coming from God. It's not that he has a lot of, he's the source of it. So since he's the source of all these qualities, of course he has infinite amounts of them. So that God is infinitely famous, infinitely rich, infinitely beautiful, intelligent, etc., etc. Okay, so if you meditate, you should, we should, of course, in Bhagavad-gita, Krishna dedicates a large part of the Bhagavad-gita to emphasize these powers, these Aishvaryas, these great powers he has. And so definitely good in the first stages when you're starting your spiritual life to meditate on God as the supreme source of all power, of all, this the best of everything, of all beauty, of all the great qualities of everything. It's definitely good just to, because here in the material world, we're all like just thinking about material things, beauty, power, money, right? We're always like, oh, he's got more power, and we're all attracted because that Hollywood star is, right now has some beauty, like, oh, so beautiful, oh, has some fame, some people were just like them. Some people are famous because they're famous. It's really weird, right? Yeah, this phenomenon of people being famous because they're famous. It's like nothing else. They're not like, it's just they're famous because they're famous. So people who have fame and money and power, and we're like, oh, this such and such, he's like such a billionaire, and we're like, oh. So because we're like that, it's good to like, okay, wait a second though. If you think it's cool to have $300 billion, can you imagine what God has? He's got everything, he's infinitely wealthy. So if you think that star is beautiful, well, Krishna is infinitely beautiful. And fame, so it's good to that's a very good first step to bhakti, to like spiritual awakening with devotion. It's just to feel. And a lot of religions kind of stay at that, like God, the all-powerful, Father Almighty, like avert your gaze and everything, because it's don't even like, that kind of like superpower. So that's okay. Later, of course, in the Christian tradition, we're like, no, forget all that and just see the sweetness and just enjoy, just love God, even forget He's God, right? In our path, we even like get to the point, Yoga Maya, where we want to forget, by Krishna's own mystic potency, we forget He's God and we just love Krishna because He's Krishna, just because of the person. No other consideration involved, just like a real love between two people. Like, it doesn't matter who you are, what you do, it's just like the love between two people. But anyway, so that's the bug. So he's Bhagavan, the possessor of unlimited opulences, principally beauty, fame, wealth, knowledge, renunciation, and intelligence. It's always like these 6 are always listed like that. In conclusion, one can obtain the mystic opulence of Vashita, or freedom from the modes of nature, by meditating upon the Lord as Turiya, the 4th factor beyond the modes, or the 4th stage of consciousness. Everything depends upon the favor of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, verse 17. One who fixes his pure mind on me in my manifestation as the Brahman without qualities obtains the greatest happiness, wherein all his desires are completely fulfilled. So this is the last one. This is the Kama Vasayita Siddhi. So this is the power. It was described here as ultimately one acquires through Kama Vasayita the maximum powers of control, acquisition, and enjoyment. So like the supreme, everything power. So Krishna says, look, you'll get that by fixing on the nirguna, without qualities, Brahman, the Brahman form in me, by concentrating dharana. He uses the word here, dharana, from the Ashtanga Yoga. Dharana, the 5th step, dharana, just before dhyan and samadhi. The sixth step, dharana, just before dhyana and samadhi, 7 and 8. So dharana, so concentrating your mind on the aspect of Krishna as Brahman, the all-pervading light of God. When you do that, you're absorbing your mind completely in transcendence. Your mind is completely out of this world. You're completely already in the Brahma, Bhuyaya, the Brahman platform, the transcendental platform. And then you will attain the greatest happiness. And again, this is exactly what we're doing. This is for all of us. This is for you and me as well. And you do experience that, right? Just as I recently posted a video explaining how, once you have this awakening, once you have your spiritual awakening, then it's like, wow, it's like, I was missing. You didn't know you were missing it until you have it. It's like you couldn't tell because it's something else. It's another thing. Like you had your life, everything was there. But when you have your spiritual awakening, now you have this other thing which you didn't know you were missing it. It's a really interesting thing about spirituality. Like until you get it, you didn't know you were missing it. Because things looked like they were normal. You looked like you were seeing everything. You thought you had a grasp on reality. But you didn't. Until you become spiritually awakened, you were missing something crucial, the most important thing, but you couldn't see it. You couldn't tell. That's a very interesting thing about spiritual awakening. It just drives humanity crazy, because people who have had the awakening, they're like, why can't you see it? And what are you talking about? There's nothing to see. You're cuckoo. You're just crazy. No, man, there's this other thing. No, you're just nuts. You just became stupid. You're now you're stupid. No, you're the one. People go crazy. Because it's this thing, it's this new thing. So once you have this, the Brahman, once you obtain a vision of transcendence, then it makes you very happy. It gives you unlimited joy. It gives you increasing bliss. This is just a direct result of spiritual awakening, bliss. And the more you focus your mind, the higher it goes, the more bliss you get. So of course, in the ultimate level, it's the incomparable happiness, way beyond anything you'd attain here, karma. All the karma here, all the desire. So your desire, all the desiring you could have, all the pleasure you could try to extract from material enjoyment, just pales in comparison. It's just nothing. It's just nothing compared to Brahman. And then of course, this is Krishna's just talking about Brahman realization, the nirguna Brahman in realization. But what about, full-on Bhagavan prema bhakti? Then it's then the Brahman realization bliss looks very small, as Rupa Goswami, a medieval saint in our lineage, he put very nicely, he says the bliss of Brahman realization, of this bliss here, this nirguna Brahman realization, is compared to the water in the footprint of a calf, compared to the ocean of bliss, of nectar, of prema bhakti. So it's like that. How much water can you have on a little footprint of a calf? And then you compare that to the ocean. That's how they put it, very poetically. Okay, so that's very good. But now we continue. But now we finish the 8. If you've been keeping track on a notebook or something, you'll notice that we've gone through the 8 mega superpowers, because remember there were 8 mega superpowers, and then there were 10 secondary powers, totally 18, and then he put an extra 5 for good measure, which weren't even considered secondary, just and then these other 5. So now he's going to start on the list of the 10, but again, this is going to be very practical and interesting for all of us. Okay, so verse 18. A human being who concentrates on me as the upholder of Dharma, the personification of purity, and the Lord of Switva Dvipa, obtains the pure existence in which he is freed from the 6 waves of material disturbance, namely hunger, thirst, decay, death, grief, and illusion. Okay, so how is this going to happen? So of course, on a supreme level, the person literally would be free of hunger, thirst, decay, death, grief, and illusion. So like literally, the person would not have to eat or drink and wouldn't age and, would control the moment he left the body. So all these things you see in the scriptures. Of course, no grief and never illuded, always clear-minded and knowing what's going on. So maybe we're not going to get to that point where, we're still going to want to have lunch today or dinner, but, and have a cup of water, and we're still unfortunately getting old, so decay is still unfortunately on track, and death, we're not going to worry too much about, but grief and illusion we can definitely work on. So, but what does it require for you to do that? Very good point. We need to see Krishna as the upholder of Dharma. In Dharma. And of course, in the enlightened path, not this meditation only path, but in the enlightened path which we're following, huge point. We're always, trying to stay on the Dharma tracks. We want to stay on the Dharma rails. And we obviously see Krishna as the form, the supreme, the upholder of Dharma. He's the Dharma Raj, and that's why also people love the Rama incarnation. In India today, they're more into like Ram than Krishna, because Krishna has the whole Vrindavan Leela, Prema Bhakti, where you go beyond. So it's like it requires spiritual advancement to understand those things, a little cool-headedness to penetrate those mysteries. It's a more of a devotional mystery, it's a more intense, inner, deeper spiritual realization needed. But Ram is easy. He's just like the king. It's easy. He's like this perfect representation of Dharma. So that's why, as a country, it's like, yeah, Ram. Let's just stick with Ram. It's because you have this glorious, powerful warrior, king, completely dedicated to Dharma. The whole Rama incarnation, the whole Ram Leela is basically about Dharma. With Krishna, the Krishna Leela, of course there's the Dharma part, but there's other things. It's about love, it's about prema. So there's a prema. But with Ram, it's like just Dharma. Let's just not mess around here. It's just Dharma. And so it's easy. There's no, but this and misinterpret. No, you can't. There's nothing really to misinterpret. It's just Dharma all the way. So definitely Dharma. We see God Dharma. So seeing God in Dharma and Dharma as your path to God, very important. So that's definitely what we're doing. You can do that as much as you can. And this will definitely help you get rid of grief and illusion, because Dharma, once you're in Dharma, there is no illusion. The real practice of Dharma means that you're seeing things as they are. You're in Sattva Guna. The definition of Sattva Guna is to practice Dharma, and the definition of Dharma is to see things as they are. So Sattva Guna, you see things as they are, you don't get confused, and because of that, you're practicing Dharma. They go together. It's like one thing comes with the other. So definitely you won't be in illusion and you won't be in grief, because when you're in Dharma, there's no room for grief. Grief is a mistake. Grief is when you're working on desire. When you're working not on Dharma, but on Kama, right? We talk about tapas. Practice of tapas is a division between Dharma and Kama. When dharma is the most important thing, you're practicing tapas. When you don't practice tapas, then you let slip, you slip down, and then kama becomes more important. So then you're guided by desire, you're goaded, as it were, you're like, oh, desire, like you become like a donkey with the little carrot, like, oh, I want that, oh, I want that. And you don't see dharma, you don't see things as they are. You become deluded. And because you're an illusion, you suffer. You become sad, because then, the problem with illusion is that it conflicts with reality. So when you have like some illusion of what life is or what you should do, and then reality kind of comes along like a Mack truck and just squishes your illusion, then you're all like, oh, you're so sad, this is so terrible, because you're an illusion. All sadness is based in illusion. It's because you weren't aligned with reality. Then in your illusion bubble burst, and then you're like, oh, what do I do now? Because you're an illusion. So definitely grief and illusion we can discard just by focusing on dharma. Grief and illusion, and death as well, in a sense, because if you're focused on dharma, you never worry about death. Yeah, you don't worry about death. It's like Arjuna in the battlefield. Why would you worry about? He wasn't worried about that. He was in a battlefield. There were literally like millions of people, armed, professional, combat, people trained in combat and violence their whole lives. There were literally like millions of people there who wanted to kill Arjuna because he was the commander of the opposite army. So there were millions of people, and there's some really the most powerful warriors on earth, Duryodhana and company, who wanted to kill Arjuna. But Arjuna was not worried about death. Ram is never worried about death. So when you're focused on dharma, you never worry about death. Because death is a consequence, death is the result. And when you're focused on dharma, you're focused on action. You're focused in the here and now. Not on death. Death is always in the future. Because when you die, it's like there's something else going on. Death is not a thing you worry about in the here and now. Death is only something we worry about in the future. Your mind has to be an illusion for you to worry about death. So, definitely no death, grief, and illusion. Again, hunger, thirst, and decay, I'm sorry. You will probably have to have lunch and drink, and you will get old. And that you have to deal with. But so focused on dharma, focused on purity, is the supreme pure, and one of the reasons why it's so intensely elevating to focus on God is because God is the supreme pure. When you come in contact with the supreme pure, you become purified. Just like you have a perfectly clean, dry towel, when it comes in contact with water, then that thing dries and it cleans even. Because it's removing the towel can absorb, because it's so clean and dry, it can absorb the dirt and the wetness. And Lord, as the supreme pure, infinitely pure, as you come in contact, it purifies you as well. And then it says, and the Lord of Switva-dvipa. So Switva-dvipa is literally the white island, or the abode of Kshirodakashai Vishnu. So the idea is that because there are like millions of universes, not the multiverse of Marvel comic stuff, but there are billions of simultaneously happening universes, according to Vedic cosmology, different universes with different people. It's not that there's like a Giridhari giving a class in some other universe. No, different people, different souls, different things going on, just different universes. But so when the universe gets created, into each of the universes, transcendental, like a spiritual embassy is created. And this is called the White Island, Switva-dvipa. And in that White Island, Lord Vishnu enters, Kshirodakashai Vishnu enters each one. So there's an expansion of God that enters each universe as Vishnu. And he lives in the White Island, Switva-dvipa. So this White Island is whereas my spiritual master, jokes around, it's God at work. So Vishnu, if you're like, oh, what's Vishnu? Vishnu is God at work. In transcendence, you don't see Vishnu. You see Narayana, you see Krishna, you see Ram, you see the different Leela, Bhagavan forms, but not Vishnu. Vishnu is at work in the material world. Not that Vishnu is material, he's transcendental, but he has a transcendental embassy in each universe. So that's why when people were doing the rituals in general in the Puranas, when God would appear somewhere, it would appear as Vishnu. Writing, just Vishnu. That's what you see. You wouldn't see like Krishna or Ram. You wouldn't see Nrsimha. No, you'd see Vishnu. So Vishnu is God at work. So then you focus. So if you concentrate your mind on Lord as the upholder of Dharma, the supreme purifier, inhabiting this embassy here in this universe, Switva-dvipa Vishnu, then with that you attain all these wonderful things. Let's just finish off with the purport. The Lord now begins to explain the process for obtaining the 10 secondary mystic perfections derived from the modes of nature. Within the material world, Lord Vishnu, addressed here as Switva-dvipapati, the Lord of Switva-dvipa, the Lord of the White Island, governs the material mode of goodness. Of course, when you have the Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, then you have Vishnu is the guna avatar of Sattva Guna, because Sattva Guna is pure Shuddha Sattva, pure Sattva Guna is transcendental energy. And it's thus called Shuddha and Dharma Maya, or the personification of purity and of Dharma. By worshipping Lord Vishnu as the personification of material goodness, one obtains the material benediction of freedom from bodily disturbance. Very good. So that's it for now. Have a rest of your day with lots of peace and lots of love.